my last video, I talked about the 17 Super Smash Bros. Stages that don't appear in Smash Bros. Ultimate, and discussed which ones I would have wanted to see in the game. In this video, I'll discuss some of the most notable stages in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. These aren't going to be the best or the worst, they're going to be both. I'll talk about my least favorite stages, my favorite stages, some controversial stages, and of course the cool stages. Throughout the video, about a third of the stages will probably be mentioned, but I can't guarantee I'll talk about all of them in depth. So if your favorite stage is Mementos, Mushroom Kingdom 2, or Flat Zone X, there's a good chance you're watching the wrong video. Little Z made a Smash Bros. Ultimate stage tier list that talks about every stage in the game if you want to watch that instead. Actually, don't watch that video because Little Z is a talentless hack who put Castle Siege in F tier and Pokemon Stadium 2 in A tier. Easily one of the most beloved stages in the game is Temple from the Legend of Zelda series. First appearing in Super Smash Bros. Melee, this stage has appeared in every game since except 3DS. What's interesting about this stage is that most big stages, such as the Great Cave Offensive, 75M, and especially New Pork City, are widely hated. But really, when you say big stage, people think of massive stages. They think of Palutena's Temple, or Great Cave Offensive, where the stage is absolutely massive. If you look at Temple, it's really not quite as big as the others, but that's not all that makes this stage good. Temple can be divided into 3 main areas that are actually playable stages themselves. Think about Palutena's Temple. If you split it up into different bits, each of them are just crappy, unplayable areas. The only area that could even be remotely playable is the bridge, but there's still that damn spike in the way. Therefore, all of them combined makes an absolute clown show of disarray. Temple is a much different story. In this stage, this gift from God himself, there are 3 distinct and playable sections. First, you have the left temple.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Second, you have the right temple.
I reveal my inmost self unto my God.
And of course, the most well-known, the Fight Club.
Keep walking, old man! The fuck? You did a number.
Each of these areas is wide enough to have at least 3 people comfortably fight, while also not having any outstanding unfair gimmicks. The only one that is slightly questionable is the Fight Club, due to the fact that it is easy to reach over 200% down there. But even that is not nearly as bad as any area from the other big stages in the game. What else is perfect about this stage is the walkways between each area. Every area has access to each of the other areas. You could argue that those walkways are the more broken parts of the stage, but this simply works to the overall beauty of the stage. These cramped and unplayable areas encourage players to move into more wide open areas where they can resume fighting. This is one of few stages that I like to play with more than 4 players, because it has the ability to evenly distribute the match. Unlike Big Battlefield, everyone is in a different spot, fighting a separate fight. For these reasons, I consider this stage to be easily the best of the big stages, and a really well designed stage all around. Talking about this stage is inevitable, so I figure I'll get it out of the way right now. Plus, it's probably the reason most of you clicked on this video. Before I start talking about this stage, I think I should explain myself a little bit. I am a Little Mac main. So you can imagine I don't do well with the aerial game or getting comboed or juggled. I heavily prefer Final Destination because Little Mac thrives on the ground, and all Final Destination is ground. So now that you know what kind of bias I have, let me talk about why I absolutely hate Battlefield. This stage is so simplistic, so you'd think there's nothing bad, right?
That's not exactly true.
What makes this stage so terrible is the 3 damn platforms. They're big enough to cover the whole damn stage, yet small enough to only allow 1 person on them at a time. If you want to play on the bottom stage, good luck, because your opponent is probably just going to camp on the top platform. The platforms allow for ridiculous combos because people can refresh their jumps without having to travel that far. What else makes this stage so horrendous is the top platform. This platform is easily the worst thing about the stage. It's the highest up, making those combos I mentioned earlier even easier to perform. Additionally, since it's on a different level than the other platforms, and it's in the middle, it's impossible to have a good grounded fight above the first level of the stage. You are forced to play an aerial game above the bottom spot. If you think you'll be able to play with just the 2 middle platforms, you're out of luck too. Only a projectile could bridge the gap, and whatever it is won't be fast enough to hit your opponent. It amazes me that with just 3 platforms, this stage can be so broken and lead to so much non-gameplay. For comparison, Lilac Cruise is almost identical to this stage, except the middle platform is on the same level as the other 2. This ever so slight difference makes the stage infinitely better. With the platforms level with each other, you can now fight on equal ground. Your opponent is no longer running away from you and getting cheap hits. Instead, they're forced to face you head on. Another quick digression I'd like to make is that I don't inherently hate platforms. In addition to Lilac Cruise, stages like Yoshi's Island, Super Happy Tree, Magic Ant, and even Jungle Japes have very well spaced platforms. In my opinion, platforms should achieve at least one of 2 things. 1. Be out of the way of the main stage, or 2. Be large enough to have a 1v1 played on them. Battlefield achieves neither of these things. To finish off this segment, I'd like to say that I similarly dislike Dreamland and Yoshi's Story for all the same reasons listed above. Some series have a few really solid stages that people like to play on, but they may also have that one stage that just doesn't fit. And then you can't say all stages from that series are good. But it seems that in the case of both F-Zero and Metroid, all their stages are absolutely amazing. Not only this, but they're all so different from each other. F-Zero features Mute City from the original F-Zero, Big Blue from F-Zero X, and Port Town Aerodive from F-Zero GX. All three are iconic stages that are all a bit different. You may consider these stages broken or unfair, but you can't deny that the stage is unique and interesting. In addition, these stages incorporate broken elements as a way to reward players who avoid them, while punishing those who are careless. In Big Blue, for example, the main idea is to stay off the track. While it's not necessarily hard to avoid, as you're provided many platforms and ships, it adds a layer of complexity which helps you gain the upper hand in the battle. I would differentiate this from other stages like Dr. Wily's Castle, because in stages like that, the goal becomes to avoid the hazard instead of using it to your advantage. Whereas in Big Blue, you still have the main goal of defeating your opponent, there's just a bit of challenge thrown in. In the case of Metroid stages, many would argue that the lava makes them broken, but again I would argue that it simply adds a layer of complexity. Plus, I found that the lava has saved me multiple times from about to fall off the edge of Brinstar or Norfair. Brinstar Depths is a bit different than the others. You fight on a stage that wraps around a chunk of land, and Kraid will periodically spin the chunk of land. This is another stage that people will call broken. It's important to realize that careful gameplay and tactful movement can easily allow a player to survive the stage. Stages that I would consider broken would be stages like Mario Bros. Or Halberd, where even the most attentive players can fall to the stage's random and broken elements. Stages like Brinstar Depths don't incorporate random or broken elements. They incorporate elements that require the player to play a more complex game. But perhaps the most interesting Metroid stage is Frigate Orpheon. This stage is very wide and has a couple larger platforms that float on either side to expand the stage. Every once in a while, the stage will flip upside down, requiring the player to quickly adapt to the new stage presented. Although the stage is banned in competitive play, none of the elements of the stage are outrageously broken. The stage flipping upside down is only a problem when the player decides to panic and try to outsmart the flip. In actuality, the best thing to do is to stay still until it's done flipping. Again, this isn't a random or broken element, this is simply an element that the player needs to adapt to. While these stages aren't perfect, it's nice to see multiple varied and interesting stages in a series. It's certainly a change of pace from the Super Mario series, where there's literally 6 stages that are all almost the exact same. And it's not just Super Mario that does it. Animal Crossing does it too, and so does Sonic the Hedgehog. I feel like this is worth noting because Metroid and F-Zero are able to have stages that are not only different from each other, but also really solid stages. For comparison, pretty much every Fire Emblem stage is different from the last, but not a lot of them are really that interesting or solid. Speaking of Fire Emblem stages, let's talk about my favorite one, Castle Siege. This stage features 3 tiers that the stage travels through, but I'd like to focus on the first one. This tier is so simple, but don't let that distract you from the genius of it. Although earlier I complained about the platforms in Battlefield, what makes these platforms so much better is that there's only 2, and there's no platform in the middle. This is similar to the top part of Spear Pillar, where there's plenty of room to fight below platforms with unobstructed air above. So if you want to, you can play a grounded game without getting punished. What else is perfect about the stage is the slight slant. This small part of the stage is what I love so much, and it's ironically what makes the stage tournament illegal. The beauty of it is that it punishes projectile users for spamming projectiles. Players like Yunlink would be forced up to the platforms where they're able to use their projectiles. This same kind of minor slant can be seen in stages like Congo Jungle, Super Happy Tree, and of course Corneria, allowing for players to battle for the high ground and forcing projectile users to be tactful and smart is what I love about this minor slant. I really appreciate how this stage allows for multiple different gameplay styles at once, much like Temple. The second and third parts of the stage are pretty standard. In the second tier of the stage, you're inside the throne room with 4 platforms. 2 of these can be broken down, like in Brinstar, and a runoff stage. Now, most players would cringe at the mention of a runoff stage, but I feel like the usage of the platforms is able to mitigate the unfairness of a runoff stage. Stages like Bridge of Eldin, Green Hill Zone, and Wii Fit Studio are only broken because there's few or no platforms, so you're forced to battle on the ground. But in this stage, the platforms are plentiful and large enough that you can fight on them instead. A similar stage to this tier is Gerudo Valley, with a runoff element in multiple platforms. However, Castle Siege is arguably more playable because it doesn't feature some of the same extra mechanics that Gerudo Valley has. Additionally, the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate version of the stage has gotten rid of the mechanic where projectiles would help break down the stage. In other words, projectiles are no longer blocked by the statues. Finally, the third tier of the stage is a very basic Final Destination-like platform, unaffected by the lava in the background. I would say the only issue with this stage is that the transition can either save or kill you, depending on where you are and which tiers it's transitioning between. Overall, the stage incorporates minor elements which mitigate the effect of otherwise undesirable stage elements. The existence of small unplayable platforms is mitigated by the slant in the ground which drives the aerial and projectile players up while allowing the close combat players to stay down. The runoff element of the stage is counteracted by the existence of very large and very playable platforms. The stage has a beautiful harmony to it, and I get a strong impression that it was carefully thought out. While stages like Flat Zone 2 and PictoChat were cut from Smash Bros. Ultimate due to having similar counterparts, Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Stadium 2 are both still here. They appear to be very similar, but in actuality they are so different that one of them is tournament illegal, and the other has been praised as being one of the most fair stages in Melee. If you ask me, I personally prefer Pokemon Stadium 1. That's a very docile way of saying that I absolutely hate Pokemon Stadium 2 and wish it were deleted from the game. Both stages cycle through 4 different terrains, and then back to the basic stage. In Pokemon Stadium 1, the 4 terrains are grass, water, fire, and rock. Interestingly enough, none of these transformations directly interfere with gameplay. Players merely adapt to the new stage, and thus the playstyle becomes more varied. This is very similar to Prism Tower and Skyloft from The Legend of Zelda. The stage's transformations don't punish players. On the other hand, Pokemon Stadium 2 cycles through the electric, ground, flying, and ice terrains. The only tolerable terrain here is the ground terrain, which is a little similar to the rock terrain from Pokemon Stadium 1. In the ice terrain, the ground is slippery, making it difficult for the players to attack each other. With the lightning version, there are conveyor belts on either side of the stage that pull you to either end. Thus, the only stable area is the middle, a very small area of the stage. Finally, the flying terrain has wind blowing up from the bottom of the stage, disrupting the aerial physics of the match. All in all, the terrains in Pokemon Stadium 2 are intrusive to the gameplay and make the player focus on outplaying the stage rather than outplaying their opponents. This reminds me of the Paper Mario stage, where each element of the stage just seems to be unnecessary and invasive to me trying to win the match. I feel like I'm playing against the stage, not the players. Pokemon Stadium 2 features stage elements that are interesting and unique, but ultimately make the gameplay rather insufferable. By comparison, Pokemon Stadium 1 provides terrain changes so non-invasive that the stage is still tournament legal in its original game. What still surprises me most about these stages is that they're both in the game. Several other stages weren't added, but had similar or identical stages added, but not this pair. And I know I spent a lot of time talking about Pokemon Stadium 2, but I should note that Pokemon Stadium 1 is one of my favorite stages. At its launch, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate featured 4 new stages, but one of them was and still is absolutely phenomenal. With the Great Plateau Tower, we have yet again a perfect minimal design that adds a profound layer of complexity. The stage is essentially shaped like Final Destination, but it has a breakable roof on top. This minor addition makes the stage infinitely more complex. Players can stay under the roof and risk racking up a lot of damage, or they can hang out on the ledges and risk getting launched. Either way, the stage forces the player to be alert and attentive to the match. It is borderline impossible to camp on the stage, and it is almost disadvantageous to ledge guard, because you'd be much safer in the short term under the roof. When the roof does break, a nice long platform materializes, allowing the gameplay to be switched up once more. Additionally, this platform eventually goes away and the roof reappears. This minimalist complexity of the stage is what makes it one of my favorite stages in the game. It's hard to pick a favorite stage in this game, so I won't, but Great Plateau Tower is certainly one of my favorites. In fact, here's a tier list I made ranking each stage in the game. I think it's interesting to talk about these stages because it's easy to forget that stages except Final Destination exist. The stages in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate are a mixed bag, but there are some brilliantly designed stages that test the boundaries of complex gameplay. Lastly, I encourage all of you to watch my first video, the one about stages not in Ultimate. Thank you for watching this video today.